Hi everybody, welcome. I'm actually Faculty of Health, as it happens. No, it's the way it's printed on the list. But welcome everybody, welcome to anyone coming in online. Good to see you here. I'm here to speak about the unexpected counterculture and real experience of voluntary mentorship. It's male mentorship that I've been focusing on in my study. In doing the study, I started my study on Gambangia land around the Coffs Harbour region, and I like to acknowledge Indigenous culture, Indigenous First Nations people, because there's such a history in storytelling and in sharing and hearing our storylines and our songlines, which ties in hugely to mentoring or voluntary mentoring, where people sit with each other and they share. I now continue my studies on Awakabul land, which is down in Newcastle, and that's where I live, love, learn, play. Always was, always will be. I'm ably supported by my supervisors, Professor Mark Hughes, Dr. Gregory Smith, and Professor John Hurley. Early on in my study, I said to them when we were meeting, I said, you're going to help me work this out. And they all started laughing. They just started laughing. And I said, what? And they went, this isn't our journey, this is yours. We're just coming along for the ride. And as I go along, I hopefully that becomes clear, because academic mentoring, which a lot of us experience, is really valuable, as is business mentoring, as is youth mentoring, school mentoring, I suppose religious mentoring, all these other forms. But I've looked at this particular one called voluntary mentoring, which I'd like to explore a bit with you. So we'll look at our youth. We'll look at people who may not be quite fitting in. We'll talk a little bit about a Greek goddess, search for a king, and then we'll get into the detail of what goes on when two men get together in private, in their own definition of what's going on, of how they're going to share with each other, and what they might share. And we'll have a look how this might then play out for us in all our different manifestations. So this whole gig started about 800 years ago. It probably started a lot further. There was this superstar playwright called Homer. So he wrote a really popular one called The Iliad. It was about the Trojan War. Then he followed up with a second play called the Odyssey. And Odysseus was the king of Ithaca, and he never returned from the Trojan War. 10 years he was gone, and his kingdom was falling into disrepair. His wife was going to have to remarry. She sewed up this tapestry every night, then unpicked it, because when it was finished, she was going to have to marry someone. And of course, when she married the person, the new king, and all these suitors were hanging around, the son, Telemachus, he'd be quickly dispatched. He was about 15 or 16 years old. So there were two plots in this play, which was presented as a poem, a big, long poem. And it was then extended many hundreds of years later by someone called Fenelon, who became the Bishop of Cambria. And he was a tutor to Louis XIII's second son. And he then wrote this play. He rewrote part of the Odyssey. He wrote it called The Journey of Telemachus. And what he did is he took a big, long swipe at the idea of kingdoms and emperors. And he got to sort of put away to the back blocks from this. But his work, The Journey of Telemachus, became this huge hit, really popular book in the 1750s. And people read. Even working class people had learned how to read and would read. Not everyone, not many people could read compared to today, but many people did. And it was very popular. Then it sort of, the mentoring floated around for a while. But the key thing that was coming out of these two works, the Odyssey and the Journey of Telemachus, was it wasn't the mentor's journey. It was the journey of the mentee. The mentee, in this case, Telemachus, was a prince. He outranked the mentor. It was his call as to which way he went. The mentor was there to be supportive. So then we get to 1978, and this group of researchers and academics, they went out and interviewed 40 men 10 of them were biology academics who had internship. 10 of them were published authors. They'd been published at least 2 books. 10 of them were working class men. And 10 of them were, I beg your pardon. So, and 10 of them were executives, I beg your pardon. So senior executives. And they spent years with them. What they did is they brought mentoring back into the fold. And they didn't treat it as something which you had to have a mentor. They just said it was necessary. They said this is a necessary aspect of human development. And in their research, they were looking, among other things, for the structures that go on in a man's life. And they didn't have the eureka moment. They didn't find that. They found this other, they actually went, ooh, what's that? That's unusual, which is where really good research is. And they turned around and went, that's odd. What's going on there? And what it was is that people develop through stages. It's very age-related and it goes on all our life. It goes on all our life. And psychology has backed this up very much. But these guys were social scientists. And they just saw mentoring as necessary for a person's maturity and development, both to be a mentee and to be a mentor. So I've been looking at the mentors. And I did a literature review, which I'm pleased to find out is actually going to be published in a Tier 1 international journal. So I just found out, yeah, pretty excited. And the key thing that came out of that was that it's an intentional relationship. It's not something that just floats along. It's intentional. You consider the other person in their fullness in the world. They consider you. You show up. You have to show up. I like the Gestalt diagram of these 2 faces as they move to each other. They give formation to each other. Men sit together. A big part of this, and this came from the people I've interviewed, is a willingness, a desire to connect. You need your will, you need your intention involved to create this relationship. So I've gone out and interviewed 12 men. They didn't know each other previously. They've mentored. They didn't know each other previously. They don't exchange material things. They meet in their own environment, whether it be walking at a cafe, park, wherever they feel like. They're not involving other family members or other friends. They're not necessarily friends either. And this is a key part. It's a mentor-mentee relationship. By all means, there's befriending going on, but they're not friends. And which I think is relevant, which I think is quite relevant, because fraternal, paternal, friendship relationships are far more nuanced. So I've gone and asked them and said, what's going on here? And these are the themes I've come out with. So connect through listening. So I did a synthesis, a thematic synthesis, and they say things like connection, it's the core. You connect with the person as an equal. You're not judging them. So important. This is the core. They come back to connecting. When they're about to give them some advice, some thought, some idea, they get back to connecting. And how they connect is through listening. Deep listening. They listen more intently. They listen for feelings. This is something that really emerges in the mentors. Some of these men, many men in our society, we're great at facts. We're wicked at it. We'll work out logistics, go here, do that. Here's the solution. Here you go, let me solve you. These guys aren't there to solve them. It's not going on. They get better at listening. These guys are saying, I'm just there to listen. It's all about my listening. And then what happens is they talk about being real. Well, that's the theme I've got. And it seems being real is about sitting with the person in the moment, as you're present with them, considering them in their fullness, not reducing them, not saying they're this career or this job or this is the objective we're working towards or where we're going to, but just sitting with a person, holding them, being careful with them, being kind to them. And they talk about being authentic, genuine, honest communication, trust, being real. I'm being with another man. One person put it in a lovely way, I thought, which is, well, we're just there. We've got all this time. We're in each other's company as 2 human beings. So these people typically, and every one of them, had spent at least 6 months mentoring another man. They meet with them once a week for an hour. So it's a fair amount. But they didn't turn around and go, oh, this is so onerous. Some of them went, oh, sometimes I think, oh, it's all too hard. Why am I doing this? But then they keep coming back to it and they put it in and they get heaps from it. And this is so if the first two areas are about what facilitates this connection, what facilitates this relationship, the last one is what goes down for the mentor. And they get this empathic awareness, their empathy grows. And they say this clearly, I'm a far more empathetic person, but they have awareness of this change in them. And they love it. It's great. They sit there and say, I'm opened up, I'm energized. One guy described his really busy week. He was a fairly old fellow. He's does a lot with his days and he's done a lot with his life. And he just says, it's Friday afternoon, and that's when I can meet my mentee. And he keeps showing up. It's like 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon after a full week. And he says, oh, I'm so tired, but I always come away from that energized. It's really good. I look forward to it. They also talked about being calmer, having developed confidence. So they go forward in the world. And some of these guys, you might think, oh, they're so confident, they're so aware, they're so capable. But they talked about, I might be out in a social situation. I feel really awkward. I'm really unsure of what I'm saying. But now these guys get there, and after being a mentor for a while, they go, I don't care. I'll just put myself out there. I'll be part of it. And that's something really clear. Those life skills in personal development, being able to talk to just about anybody. So voluntary mentoring, almost anyone can do it. You need to have balance, you need to have some self-care in place. You might end up hearing heavy stuff. Sometimes the mentee has come to it because of a particular critical moment in their life, a life event has gone on. Maybe their life has just been chaos from early trauma. It seems, and this isn't my area of inquiry, that the mentoring seems to be restorative to the mentees. But that's someone else's work to do. Just the deep listening. But as some of the mentors said, I could be saying, I'll go and do X, Y, and Z, giving advice. But they sit there and make this really clear. Advice giving is not listening. Our idea of mentoring that's being given to us, often through a lot of prescriptive ideas within institutions, such as businesses, is the mentor is there to be the advice, the sage advice giver. These guys don't do that at all. Advice giving is just disconnection. It's not listening. One of the things makes you at least less effective if you try to fix the other person, solve their problems. Not on. In fact, when they're about to give advice, when they're about to give you their pearl of wisdom, that's their trigger to get back to listening, to get back to connecting, because that's where the work is. And this is almost something which brings them to a presence. They're grounded in the world with another human being. And they get many benefits from it. When I talk to these guys, nearly all of them, one or another, have been exposed to a particular poem, which just grabs it about the listening. And I'd like to recite that now, if that's okay. And I like the idea of the poem because the original play was a great big long poem. It was actually out in front of people. This is by Ray Horton, 1979. Please, just listen. When I ask you to listen to me and you start giving advice, you have not done what I asked. When I ask you to listen to me and you begin to tell me why I shouldn't feel that way, you are trampling on my feelings. When I ask you to listen to me and you feel you have to do something to solve my problems, you have failed me. Strange as that may seem, listen. All I ask was that you listen, not talk or do, just hear. Advice is cheap. 25 cents will give you both Dear Abby and Billy Graham in the same newspaper, and I can do that for myself. I'm not helpless. maybe discouraged and faltering, but not helpless. When you do something for me that I can and need to do for myself, you contribute to my fear and inadequacy. But when you accept as a simple fact that I do feel, no matter how irrational, then I can quit trying to convince you and get about the business of understanding what's behind this irrational feeling. And when that's clear, the answers are obvious. And I don't need advice. Irrational feelings make sense when we understand what's behind them. So please listen and just hear me. And if you want to talk, wait a minute for your turn and I'll listen to you. That was 1979.
1 minute.
Thank you. So why do this? Why do these guys do this? Give up their valuable time in their busy lives? Well, firstly, they get to contribute. And this they enjoy. It gives them a buzz. They see the improvement in other men's lives. Some of them talk very much about tackling a major problem, which is loneliness, and it can lead to suicide rate in men, and that's part of why my focus is gender specific. And they also recognise there's a ripple effect in the community. They see this as going out somewhere, which is important. They have unexpected shifts. They didn't expect this going on. They talk about, I've become more relaxed about issues. One bloke says, so what? Grass grows. Mow it tomorrow. Doesn't matter. They're getting focused on what has meaning for them. One person said it really particularly. He said, if I took it away, if I took it out of my life, I'd be looking to replace it. I'd have a hole in my life. It's something where they almost stepped into this empathic awareness, and they want this. They want this in their life. And there's personal development, caring and trust. They feel that it's made them more of an empathetic person. So in summary, and where does this sit with us? And I don't see it as gendered. I see it as all of us. I'm very much informed by feminists and the caring feminism. So important. But in a way, it's men's work at the moment. It's almost like we dropped the ball. We got so caught up in the facts and figures that we forgot about the feelings. And that's what this volunteering, as we introduce into it, we can connect with each other. And we're connecting, we're healing, we're improving our empathy. So it's a work in progress. I always like a line which I heard along the way, and it's that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Thanks.
It's true. Thanks, Mark. Well done. Any comments or questions for Mark? Yeah.
I'll wait for the microphone.
Yeah, it helps the recording, I've been told.
Yes, certainly. Thank you. Firstly, I'll just apologise. I was a tiny little bit late to the start, so you may have said this at the beginning. I'm just interested whether you noticed that in that mentoring relationship that it always seems to be an older man mentoring a younger man, or whether how much of a part age plays in this relationship, or whether that's not necessarily the case.
No, it's not necessarily the case. Generally, that is the way it plays out. There's an intergenerational aspect, and it's good to have a connection where people understand one guy's separated and suddenly he's found himself mentoring another guy who's just going through separation. So the person I mentor at the moment, and I see it more as befriending, he's 94 years old. So there are different things. There was another guy who joined the group and he was 78. He'd been like a school principal, and he said, I need a mentor. And so they had to wait for a bit. And then another guy joined and he was 80.
Wow.
They get on great, I believe. I mean, it's their relationship and they work out what they want. So, but yes, often intergenerational, there's that guidance. Older man might be somewhat, buried a few more dragons along the way, maybe.
Well, secondly, if that's okay, another question I had with that mentoring, because it is so important to have that personal connection, I just wonder whether you'd notice situations where that relationship has developed, and then the mentor and the person being mentored had switched over time, whether that ever happens.
For sure.
Thank you.
360-degree mentoring. You know, there's everyone in this room has stuff to teach me and to share, and has these skills and abilities and graces and understandings, which if I can connect with that person and they can connect with me, then how wonderful that is. And this goes on all the time. And the mentors talk about this. You know, he taught me. I mean, I had one bloke, he was a lot of life experience and many roles of mentoring in different areas, in military, in education, in community development. And he was with a young psych student. And he's saying, oh, this young person has taught me so much. But it's not really about the technical. It's not really about the knowledge transfer in voluntary mentoring. It's about the feeling transfer and the empathic growth and awareness.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.